On the day of the sniper assessment for the T-Country SWAT team, I was deliberately made to miss 3 shots. My team leader boyfriend publicly tore up my sniper certificate. If you can't even hold a gun steady, you might as well go make tea in logistics. His white moonlight covered her mouth and chuckled softly. After all, sister is getting older. They didn't know that a chemical plant outside the city had been taken over by rioters, and the only top-level sniper qualification in the entire country had just been revoked by their own hands. When the alarm blared through headquarters, I was leisurely organizing the tea set. The director rushed in and roared at him. The mayor's daughter is among the hostages, who can now shoot through the ventilation pipe from a distance. When he turned pale and looked at me, I smiled and handed him a freshly brewed cup of hot tea. Sorry, Captain, but right now, I'm just here to make tea. I stared at the bullseye in the scope, my fingertips gently brushing against the trigger guard. That tiny dot 300 meters away was slightly distorted under the scorching sun. Sweat trickled down my temple, seeping into the corner of my eye with a stinging saltiness. But I didn't move. My breathing was as steady as a slumbering sea. Captain Julin stood half a step behind me. Slightly to my left, I could feel his gaze on the side of my face, as if it carried a tangible warmth, scrutiny, and a hint of something barely perceptible. Impatience, his white moonlight, Lin Jingjing, stood close to him, wearing an irregular training uniform. Her training uniform was custom-made, with an extremely tight waist, made of brand-new, crisp fabric that accentuated her delicate figure even more. Lin, her voice was soft and sticky, like honey that wouldn't dissolve. Sister Jiang has been holding this position for so long. Is she too nervous? Julin didn't respond, but I heard him let out an extremely soft snort through his nose. The other team members around also remained quiet, with only the faint sound of wind sweeping across the training ground, stirring up dust. This annual sniper assessment is related to the qualification for next spring's international joint exercise. More importantly, the team's only top sniper. Special allowance and honorary spot will also be determined after this assessment. Everyone believed that this spot was mine for the taking. From the very first day I joined the team, I was the sharpest blade among them. Every shot hit its mark. For the past 5 years, the name Jiang Xianyu has been synonymous with precision, until Lin Jingjing descended from the sky, until Julin's heart clearly leaned to the side. The fingertips twitched slightly, breathing was drawn out and slowed in a certain moment. In the field of vision, only that black bullseye remains. Wind speed, humidity, gravity, all the data flows into a river in an instant within the mind, converging at the fingertips. Now is the moment. Pull the trigger, bang. The familiar recoil traveled through the rifle. It was very slight, but the distant target indicator did not immediately light up with the green halo that signaled a hit, as it usually did. A dead silence fell. Missed. That's impossible. My brow furrowed almost imperceptibly before relaxing again. Oh, a miss on the very first shot. Lin Jingjing's voice carried an undisguised delight, though she immediately covered her mouth, pretending to be surprised. Julin took half a step forward, his voice low and stern. Jiang Xianyu, focus. I didn't look back. I readjusted my breathing and chambered the second round, aiming, firing, bang. The target indicator remained silent. That void representing disgrace, like a silent mockery, struck everyone's eardrums. Whispers began to ripple across the training ground. What's wrong with Sister Jiang today? Are you feeling unwell? 2 consecutive misses. Julin's breathing grew heavier. I could imagine his furrowed brow at this moment, and those eyes that always carried a critical gaze must now be filled with disappointment. No, perhaps not disappointment, it was a kind of validated certainty. Lin Jingjing gently tugged at Julin's sleeve, her voice soft but clear enough for the few people around to hear. Lin, don't blame Sister Jiang. She might be feeling pressured because I'm here. After all, you too used to. She trailed off, leaving endless room for imagination. Julin shook off her hand, his tone carrying suppressed anger. This is an assessment setting. Maintain discipline. He was protecting her by criticizing her. I licked my somewhat dry lips, tasting a hint of metallic flavor on my tongue, not sure if it was the wind and sand, or something else. The third bullet was loaded into the chamber. The cold touch of metal transmitted through the fingertips in the scope. The black bullseye seemed to tremble slightly, or perhaps, it's my heart that's trembling. Julin, I silently Repeated this name in my heart. I remembered 3 months ago, when he cornered me in the equipment room, his hot breath brushing against my neck, his voice hoarse. Shenyu, give me a little more time, wait until I've established myself, until Jingjing has adjusted to life in the team. You know, she's not in good health, and her personality is fragile. She can't manage without someone to take care of her. How did I answer back then, looking at his eyes and brows that were so close and had once made my heart flutter? I only said one word, okay. I thought that was a promise. Turns out, it was just my own predicament now. I don't want to play anymore. The fingertip gently pulls the trigger. Bang! The third gunshot echoes over the empty training ground. Still, there is no target report signal. 3 bullets. All missed. A deathly silence fell. Even the wind stopped. Lin Jingjing was the first to react. She let out a short gasp, then tightly covered her mouth with her hand. Only her eyes, curved like crescent moons, were filled with a smugness that seemed about to overflow. Zhu Lin moved. He strode over to me, his figure blocking the light in front of me and casting a shadow. He looked down at me from above, the last trace of warmth in his eyes fading away, leaving only icy disdain and relief. He reached out his hand, his voice not loud, yet sharp as an ice-forged blade, piercing straight into my eardrums. Sniper certification. I looked up, meeting his gaze. His pupils were deep brown. I used to think they held galaxies and oceans, but now they only reflected my face, calm to the point of numbness. Give it to me, he repeated, his tone leaving no room for doubt. I didn't move. All the team members around us were watching. Their gazes were complex. Shock, confusion, sympathy, and a hint of schadenfreude. Lin Jingjing spoke up at the right moment, her voice soft and delicate yet sharp as a needle. Aylin, don't be like this. Sister Jiang is, after all, getting older, so it's normal for her performance to decline. She didn't mean to. Getting older? I'm only 2 years older than her. Zhu Lin seemed completely ignited by these words. He suddenly reached out and snatched the sniper certificate hanging around my neck. It still carries my body warmth in the photo. My gaze is sharp, carrying the edge and conviction of when I first entered the profession. He pinched that thin card, his fingertips turning white from the pressure. Then, in front of me, in front of everyone, rip, a crisp sound. He tore the card in half with a fierce motion. The sound of tearing fabric was unbearably sharp. He threw the torn-in-half certificate into the dust at my feet. Can't even hold a gun steady, his voice dripping with venom, each word striking my face. Might as well go make tea in logistics. With that, he didn't spare me another glance, turned, wrapped his arm around Lin Jingjing's shoulder, his voice suddenly gentle. Jingjing, let's go. Next assessment. You're up. Lin Jingjing nestled in his arms, glancing back at me. That gaze was filled with the pity and pride of a victor. Arm in arm, they walked across the training ground toward the office building in the distance. The sunlight stretched their leaning figures into long shadows. The team members exchanged glances, then silently dispersed one by one. No one came forward to say a word to me. I stood in place, head lowered, staring at the sniper certificate torn in two at my feet. In the photo, I was split down the middle by the tear, my gaze still sharp, yet somehow pitiful. The wind blew, stirring up dust that gently brushed against it. I slowly crouched down, extended my hand in tactical gloves, and gently brushed away the dust on it. Then I carefully picked up the 2 halves of the fragment, brought them together, and held them in my palm. The edges were somewhat sharp, digging painfully into my palm. I stood up and looked up at the sky. The sky is very blue, the clouds are very white, and the sunlight is a bit dazzling in the distance. The figures of Zhu Lin and Lin Jingjing have already turned into 2 blurry specks. I turn around and slowly walk toward the direction opposite the office building. The short, old building where the logistics department is located. My steps are neither hurried nor slow. Behind lies the empty sniper training ground. In the wind, there seems to linger the scent of gunpowder and betrayal. My fingertips, in my pocket, gently brush against those 3 unfired bullet casings. Cold, hard, the corner of the mouth, almost imperceptibly curved into a very shallow arc. Making tea that works. Chapter 2. The logistics department is in the farthest corner on the 1st floor. Pushing open the door, a musty smell of dust mixed with the aroma of cheap tea wafted over. Old Zhong was dozing off on the desk. Hearing the noise, he groggily lifted his head, Seeing it was me, he paused for a moment, then gave a knowing smile tinged with a hint of sympathy. Here, he didn't ask further, just pointed to the table in the corner, which was covered in a thin layer of dust. You'll sit there from now on. I nodded and walked over. The table was old, with a mottled paint finish, and its legs wobbled slightly outside the window. A corner of the training ground was visible, with a few blurry figures moving about. It was likely Ju Lin leading Lin Jingjing through some adaptive training. I pulled out the chair and sat down, the scraping sound harsh and grating. Old Zhong brought me a set of half-new teaware, white porcelain, with a small chip on the rim of the cup. We don't have so many formalities here, he said, rubbing his hands. Usually, we just brew some big leaf tea to quench the thirst of those lads outside. I laid out the tea set piece by piece: teapot, teacups, tea tray. The movements were slow, carried out with an almost ritualistic focus. Old Zhong watched for a while, shook his head, and then lay back down to doze off. Sunlight slanted in through the high window, casting dappled shadows on the desktop. It was very quiet here, a stark contrast to the tension of bullets whistling and commands echoing on the shooting range, an almost stagnant silence. I picked up the chipped teacup and held it up to the light. The porcelain was coarse, completely incomparable to the custom-made pieces I had used before, fingertips rubbing over that gap. It feels a bit rough, not bad. Chapter 3. When Ju Lin pushed the door open, I was washing the tea for the second time. The water temperature must be just right. Too high will scorch the tea leaves. Too low won't release the aroma. He stood at the doorway, backlit, his figure tall and imposing, carrying the scent of sweat and dust unique to the training ground, out of place in this room filled with tea stains and the stale smell of decay. He frowned, seemingly unaccustomed to the scent here. Jiang Xianyu. He called my name, his tone cold and businesslike. I didn't look up, focusing intently on the water flowing into the teapot, swirling the emerald green leaves up and down. The director just had a major outburst. He took a step forward, his leather shoes clicking clearly on the old terrazzo floor. The spot for the international exercise next spring has been given to Jingjing. The sound of running water didn't stop. The tea leaves slowly unfurled, releasing a delicate and elegant fragrance. Her skills still need honing, but this is an opportunity. He added another sentence, as if explaining, yet also as if persuading himself. I covered the teapot lid and let it steep. The timing must be just right. He paused, a hint of barely perceptible irritation creeping into his voice. Don't you have anything to say? I finally lifted my eyes to look at him. He was wearing a crisp training uniform, the shoulder seams perfectly straight, the collar buttoned up tight. Still the same meticulous, cold, and imposing appearance, but there was something more in his eyes. Guilt? No, it was more like a slight unease after a burden had been lifted. What did you say? I spoke, my voice a bit hoarse, perhaps from not having spoken for too long. Congratulate her. Ju Lin's brows furrowed even tighter. Jiang Xianyu, I know you're angry inside. He took a step forward, approaching my desk, his fingers unconsciously tapping on the desktop. But the assessment failure was your own issue. The SWAT team doesn't need unstable factors. He looked down and saw the sniper certificate, torn in half and carefully taped back together with clear adhesive, placed at the corner of my desk. The crack in the photo was like an ugly scar. His eyes flickered for a moment before quickly looking away. What's the point of keeping something like this? His tone carried a hint of disdain. Once it's torn, it's torn. I didn't say a word, picked up the teapot, and poured the brewed tea into the fairness cup. The tea liquor is clear and bright, with a captivating aroma. It's this year's Preaching Ming Longjing tea, a fine stash that old Zhong had been keeping, and I managed to dig it out. The logistics department is quite good too. Ju Lin glanced around the simple office, his tone softening a bit, carrying a hint of condescension. It's leisurely, with little pressure. It suits your current state. He looked at me, his eyes seeming to drift for a moment. I remember you used to love the tea I brewed the most. That was back when he was pursuing me. He was just a newly promoted deputy team leader then, not as busy, and would deliberately find all sorts of teas, using his treasured purple clay teapot, clumsily brewing them for me. The water was always too hot or too cold. The tea is either too strong or too weak, but I finish it every time. He thought that was love. Maybe it once was, but now. I picked up the fairness cup and poured the tea into 2 tasting cups. The movements flowed smoothly. I placed 1 cup in front of him, One for myself. Want a taste? I said. Julin looked at the cup of tea but didn't move. His gaze fell on my hand. These hands once held a sniper rifle with unwavering steadiness, setting a record. In the team that remains unbroken to this day now, they are fumbling with these bottles and jars. The last flicker of emotion in his eyes has also subsided. In its place is a complete indifference and detachment. No, he took a step back, creating distance. I have things to attend to in the team. He turned and walked toward the door, his steps unwavering when his hand touched the doorknob. He paused for a moment but did not look back. Jiang Xianyu, behave yourself, don't give me any more. Don't cause any more trouble. The door was pulled open, then closed. It cut off the faint sound of slogans from the training ground outside. It also cut him off. The office fell quiet once more. Only the fragrance of tea lingered in the air. I picked up my own cup of tea, brought it to my nose, and took a gentle sniff. The aroma was delicate, carrying a blend of cardamom and orchid. It's good tea. I lower my head, blow away the leaves floating on the water's surface, and take a small sip. The tea is warm and smooth, slightly bitter upon entering the mouth, with a quick return of sweetness. The fragrance lingers on the lips and teeth. Setting down the teacup, I picked up the sniper certificate that had been taped back together on the table. My fingertips traced the clear crack across the photo. The tape was applied smoothly. But a mark remains a mark, just like some things, once broken, can never be fully pieced back together. Outside the window, the sky gradually darkened. In the distance, the office building lit up with scattered lights. One of them belonged to the team leader's office once. I too had a light there. Now there is nothing left, but it doesn't matter. I picked up the thermos and refilled the teapot with hot water. The steam rose, blurring the view outside the window and also obscuring the glaring crack on the photograph. Chapter 4. When Lin Jingjing found the logistics department, I was wiping the tea tray. She wasn't wearing her training uniform, but had changed into a goose yellow dress, the hem swaying gracefully with her steps. It formed a stark contrast with the dusty, grey room. Sister Jiang. Her voice was sickly sweet as her gaze swept around the cramped office, not bothering to hide the disdain in her eyes. This place is really quiet. I didn't respond. Carefully wiping the water stains off the tea tray with a soft cloth, old Zhong tactfully found an excuse to slip out, giving me a look that said good luck before he left. Lin Jingjing sat down across from me on her own, placing an exquisite paper bag on the table. Freshly baked egg tarts. Lin made a special trip to that old shop in the west of the city to buy them for me. She raised her little finger, opened the paper bag, and a sweet, rich aroma wafted out. I thought Sister Jiang probably doesn't have anything tasty here, so I brought 2 for you to try. The egg tarts were golden and crispy, still steaming hot. I set down the tea tray, picked up a teacup, and continued wiping it. Slowly and methodically. Lin, he's just too worried about me, she sighed, but her tone was full of pride. He insisted that training is hard and I need to replenish. Honestly, I don't think it's a big deal. After all, I'll be representing the team in competitions later. So a little hardship is to be expected. She leaned in closer, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. Sister Jiang, you know, right, that international exercise next spring. The spot has been given to me. I looked up at her. She immediately straightened up, wearing a perfectly crafted expression of apology and helplessness. Actually, I feel really bad for you. After all, you've been preparing for this assessment for so long. But Aylin said opportunities should be given to those with more potential. He also said. She paused, observing my expression before continuing slowly. You're getting older, and your reflexes and stamina just aren't what they used to be. Pushing yourself too hard might not be a good idea. It could lead to embarrassment. Staying in logistics, safe and steady, suits you better. I set down the teacup, its base meeting the table with a crisp sound. Finished? I asked. Lin Jingjing's smile froze for a moment, as if she hadn't expected this reaction from me. Her carefully prepared lines felt like a punch thrown into cotton. Sister Jiang, please don't misunderstand. Both Aylin and I have your best interests at heart. Egg tarts. I interrupted her, my gaze falling on the paper bag. They'll get cold if you don't eat them soon. Lin Jingjing pursed her lips, a flicker of annoyance flashing in her eyes, but it was quickly masked by a sweet smile. You're right, they won't taste as good once they're cold. She picked up an egg tart and took a small bite. The flaky pastry crumbling and scattering onto her expensive dress, she exclaimed in surprise and quickly patted it. A bit flustered, I picked up the thermos and poured water into the empty teapot. Steam rose, separating us. Sister Jiang, she straightened her skirt, put on a smile again, and spoke in a condescending tone. If you really want to handle guns, I could talk to Aylin later and have you help out in the armory. Maybe clean some guns. It's better than staring at these bottles and jars all day. Don't you think? The water was full. I put the lid on the teapot. No need, I said. I think making tea is just fine. Lin Jingjing stared at me for a few seconds, then suddenly smiled. That's true. She stood up, picked up her designer handbag with an elegant posture, and said, it's important to know one's place. It's best that you've come to your senses. Sister Jiang. She walked to the door, then turned back and added, by the way, Aylin and I are holding our engagement party next month. You must come. I didn't respond. She didn't care either, humming a tune, stepping in her high heels, and walking away with a click-clack. The office fell quiet again. Only the cloyingly sweet scent of the egg tarts remained, along with the faint, unpleasant perfume she had left behind. I picked up the paper bag, along with the remaining egg tarts inside, and threw them into the trash can in the corner. Clang! Then I opened the window. The late autumn wind, carrying a chill, rushed in and quickly dispersed the cloyingly sweet scent. I sat back in the chair, gazing out the window on the training ground. Zhu Lin was instructing Lin Jingjing in shooting practice. He stood behind her, almost holding her in a half embrace, adjusting her posture with his hands guiding hers. The distance was too far to see their expressions clearly, but it was likely that he was being extremely patient. I withdrew my gaze and picked up the sniper certificate that had been glued back together on the table. My fingertip gently tapped the crack on the photo once, and then again. Chapter 5. The days in the SWAT team were as regular as clockwork. The logistics department was even more so, making tea, cleaning, organizing the warehouse. Monotonous, repetitive. Old Zhong is a quiet, honest man who spends most of his time dozing off or reading the newspaper. He never asks me why I came here, nor does he mention anything about the training ground. That's good. Zhu Lin comes by occasionally. Usually it's to fetch Lin Jingjing's forgotten water bottle here, or some snack she specifically requested. He always comes and goes in a hurry, rarely looking directly at me, as if one more glance would tarnish the dignity of his captaincy. Sometimes he would give a few official instructions. Leaders will be visiting next week, so logistics should prepare tea for the reception. Take some time to inventory the batch of old equipment in the warehouse. Jingjing has a sensitive stomach, so from now on, her tea shouldn't be too hot. I acknowledged each of these tasks one by one, no extra emotions. He seemed quite satisfied with my docility. The wariness and scrutiny in his eyes gradually faded. Replacing it was a habitual disregard, as if I were always meant to be a background figure, a symbol in this logistics department, like the teapot I've used for years by my side. Familiar, yet no longer eye-catching. Lin Jingjing, on the other hand, is a regular here. She always finds all sorts of excuses to drop by. Sometimes it's complaining about how tough the training is, and other times it's bragging about what gift Zhu Lin gave her. She loves to flaunt their affection in front of me, and how indulgent Zhu Lin is with her. Lin insisted on buying me this bag. I told him it was too expensive, and not to. But he just wouldn't listen. I sprained my ankle during training yesterday, and Orin was so worried that he insisted on carrying me to the medical room. Honestly, with so many teammates watching, Sister Jiang, do you think my new nails look good? Orin said they look like flower petals. I usually just listen, occasionally giving a perfunctory or not bad when she asks. This seems to leave her a bit disappointed, yet also somewhat pleased, disappointed at not seeing the pain and jealousy I had anticipated. Pleased with my resignation and downfall, she grew increasingly relaxed, and the probing and provocation in her words became more and more direct. Sister Jiang, was there also an element of luck in your past sniper records? Actually, being an ordinary woman is quite nice too. All that fighting and killing just isn't suited for us in the end. Aylin said that someone like me makes him feel more protective. I wiped the teacup, watching my blurry reflection on the smooth porcelain surface, calm and undisturbed until that day. She came in holding an exquisitely packaged box. Sister Jiang, I have something good to show you. She opened the box, revealing a custom-made miniature pistol inside. The gun was compact, plated in rose gold, with finely crushed diamonds embedded in the grip, sparkling under the light like a magnificent work of art. Beautiful, isn't it? Lin Jingjing picked up the gun, unable to put it down as she admired it. A gift from Lin to express his love. He said that since I'll be his wife someday, I should learn some self-defense. She casually aimed the muzzle out the window, her movements clumsy and dangerous. He said this gun has low recoil, perfect for a girl, but I think, no matter how low the recoil, you still need some talent. Unlike some people who rely solely on brute strength but falter when it matters most, she didn't finish her sentence. But the meaning was clear. Her gaze swept over me with a pointed implication. I put down the rag in my hand and looked at the gun in hers. The rose gold shimmered with a cheap and flashy luster under the dim light. Your grip is wrong, I suddenly spoke up. Lin Jingjing was taken aback. What? Your wrist is too stiff, your finger is pressing too deep on the trigger. Your line of sight isn't aligned with the rear sight and front sight. My voice was flat, as if stating an objective fact. With your current form, forget about hitting the target. You might even injure yourself with a stray bullet. Lin Jingjing's face instantly turned pale. She put down the gun in frustration and closed the box. Like you know anything about it, she retorted with a pout, her tone tinged with annoyance. Too bad, I'm the one holding the gun now. She picked up the box and turned to leave. At the door, she paused again. Oh, right. She turned back, her face once again wearing that triumphant smile. I left the invitation to the engagement party on your desk. Remember to come. She swayed her hips and walked away. On the desk, there was indeed a large red invitation with gold foil lettering. The cover featured two silhouettes nestled together. I picked it up and opened it. Ju Lin, Lin Jingjing. Two names were written side by side. Below were the time and location, a grand engagement banquet. I closed the invitation, my fingers gently rubbing against the smooth paper surface. Then, with a slight flick of my wrist, the invitation slid precisely into the trash can under the table. Not a single sound was made. I picked up the watering can and gave a little water to the half-dead pot hose on the windowsill. Water droplets rolled down the leaves, seeping into the cracked soil. Soon, there was no trace left. Chapter 6. The night before the engagement banquet, a heavy rainstorm fell. I was on night duty. The old-fashioned wall clock in the logistics department ticked away, while outside the window, the rain poured down, pounding against the glass with a crackling sound. The warehouse requires routine inspections. I took a flashlight and pushed open the heavy iron door. A smell of metal, machine oil, and dust rushed toward me. The flashlight beam swept across the tall shelves, neatly stacked with spare equipment and materials. Shadows flickered at the edge of the light beam, like a lurking giant beast. Walking into the innermost room, it was the temporary firearms storage. Some firearms that required maintenance or temporary storage would be kept here with incomplete procedures. I couldn't enter. Only through the fence gate could I see the outlines inside. Covered with dust cloths, they stood there silently, like forgotten soldiers. Once, there was a gun there that belonged to me, codename Crow Feather, the black gun body, specially treated to absorb light and maintain stability in extreme environments. It's my old partner, which I've spent 5 years gradually breaking in. On the day I failed the assessment, it was taken away along with the sniper certificate that Ju Lin tore up. The flashlight beam swept unconsciously over the corners inside the fence. Suddenly, the beam froze in an inconspicuous corner. The dust cover was not properly secured, revealing a familiar black gunstock. Lines, curves. It's Crow Feather. It was thrown here, like an abandoned old toy. It's probably covered in dust by now. My fingers gripping the flashlight tightened slightly. The beam of light steadily illuminated the gunstock. Motionless, the sound of rain tapping against the window grew clearer, dense, cold, like the silent drops of sweat that fell on the training ground that day. The sharp, tearing sound as Ju Lin ripped the documents apart, and Lin Jingjing's sweet, cooing voice. After all, sister is getting older. In the beam of light, dust floated slowly, separated by the fence, separated by distance. My old buddy and I silently lock eyes. A long time passes. I shift the beam of light away, turning elsewhere. I continue the unfinished patrol. Footsteps fall on the concrete floor of the empty warehouse, producing a faint echo. Step by step, steady, just like before, lying in wait at the high ground, waiting for the target to appear. Patience, Silence. Chapter 7. The next day was a rare fine weather, the sun is shining, and the sky is a brilliant blue. It's as if last night's heavy rain was just an illusion. However, the logistics department is busier than usual. Old Jong was called early in the morning to help set up the venue for the engagement banquet. The scene is said to be quite grand, with all the leaders from the bureau attending. I stayed in the office, dealing with the backlog of warehouse inventory. The phone rang. It was Ju Lin. His voice came through the receiver, carrying a hint of barely noticeable tension, but his tone remained commanding. Jiang Xianyu, the brooch Jingjing left behind in the logistics department. Find it and bring it to the lounge next to the banquet hall immediately. After saying this, he hung up the phone without waiting for my response, swift and decisive as he had always given any combat command. I put down the receiver and found the brooch in the drawer, next to the spot where Lin Jingjing often sat. The diamonds were set in the shape of a feather, refracting dazzling light in the sun. It was very expensive and perfectly matched her taste. I closed the drawer and picked up the brooch. The cool touch of metal met my fingertips. Chapter 8. The banquet hall was located in the main building of the administration block. Along the way, I encountered many colleagues dressed in their finest attire. When they saw me, their expressions turned somewhat subtle: surprise, awkwardness, or simply a sense of watching a spectacle. I was wearing the standard grey uniform of the logistics department, holding that shiny brooch in my hand, completely out of place amidst the elegant and glamorous surroundings. No one greeted me. I also kept my eyes straight ahead. The lounge was at the end of the corridor. The door was slightly ajar. Inside came the sound of Lin Jingjing's voice, choked with tears. What should I do? I can't find it. That was the first gift you ever gave me. Lin, don't worry, I've already sent someone to get it. It was Ju Lin's voice, soothing and calm. But it's about to start. So many leaders are here. Without the brooch, this gown just isn't complete. Jingjing, it's just a piece of jewelry. It's not important. But it is important. It was your heartfelt gift. Her voice choked with emotion. It's all my fault. I was too careless. I pushed the door open and entered. There were only the two of them in the lounge. Lin Jingjing was dressed in a pristine custom-made gown, her makeup flawless, yet her eyes were slightly red, as if she had suffered a great injustice. Ju Lin stood beside her in a sharply tailored suit, gently patting her back when she saw me enter. Lin Jingjing's sobs paused for a moment before growing even more pitiful. Ju Lin looked up, saw me, and his brows instinctively furrowed. Where is it? He asked, his tone carrying a sense of entitlement. I walked over and handed him the brooch. He took it without even glancing at me, then turned around and carefully pinned it on Lin Jingjing. See, I found it, he said, his voice unusually gentle. Lin Jingjing wiped away her tears and smiled, turning to look at herself in the mirror, satisfied. She spun around and threw herself into Ju Lin's arms. Ah Lin, you're so good to me. Ju Lin held her close, his gaze finally settling on me. That look in his eyes was as if he were looking at an insignificant tool that had served its purpose. It's fine. You can go back now. He waved his hand as if dismissing a servant. I stood where I was, unmoving. My gaze swept across this warmly and romantically decorated lounge. Flowers, balloons, and a giant character pasted on the wall and on them. Those glaringly bright formal attire. Lin Jingjing lifted her head from Ju Lin's embrace, as if she had just noticed me, and flashed a sweet yet apologetic smile. Thank you, Sister Jiang. Sorry to trouble you to make a special trip, she said, picking up an exquisitely packaged candy box from the side. This is a token of our gratitude. Share in our joy. She handed the box over. I didn't take it. Ju Lin's expression darkened. Jiang Xianyu, he said in a warning tone. I looked into Lin Jingjing's eyes, which were filled with pride and provocation. Then I turned to Ju Lin's face, which was etched with impatience. After that, I reached out my hand, but not to take the candy box, but gently straightened the collar of my grey uniform. The movement was deliberate and unhurried. No need, I said, my voice as calm as deep water. I can't share in your joy. With that, I turned and walked away without looking at their instantly changed expressions. Pulled open the door, walked outside. Some guests waiting to enter had already gathered in the corridor. They saw me, and they also saw the two people embracing in the lounge. Their gazes were varied. I straightened my back and, under those complex stares, walked step by step back along the path I had come. Behind me, the door to the lounge slowly closed, cut off from that false warmth. It also seemed to cut off an entire era. Sunlight streamed in through the window at the end of the corridor, casting bright patches of light on the floor. My shadow stretched long and thin alone. Chapter 9. Back at the logistics department, old Zhong had already returned and was staring at the pile of lists on the table with a worried expression. "Xiaojiang, you're finally back," he said, adjusting his reading glasses. "These kids are getting more and more careless when taking supplies. The accounts just don't add up." I sat down across from him and picked up a list. It was a record of the consumption of training blanks and laser simulators. The numbers were clearly off. Last Thursday, Lin Jingjing had extra solo training. Old Zhong pointed to one entry. She took 3 boxes of blanks, said it was specially approved by Captain Zhu. But this record, he shook his head and didn't say anything more. The meaning was clear. Special approval meant that the usual procedures could be bypassed, numbers could be fudged. I picked up the pen and drew a question mark after that item. Record what needs to be recorded, report what needs to be reported, I said. Old Zhong glanced at me, hesitated to speak, but in the end, he just sighed and continued burying his head in the accounts. Outside the window, faint sounds of lively music and applause could be heard. The engagement banquet should have started by now. I picked up a cloth and began wiping the tea set that was already gleaming over and over again, until they no longer reflected even the faintest glimmer of light from outside the window. Chapter 10. The calm lasted less than 2 hours. A piercing alarm, without warning, tore through the afternoon tranquility. It was the highest-level emergency assembly alarm. Old Zhong suddenly stood up, his face instantly changing. "Something big has happened." Before his words had even finished, the office door was slammed open with a bang. A young team member rushed in, panting heavily, his face deathly pale. "Zhong, Uncle Zhong, quick, the chief has ordered all logistics personnel to immediately assemble on the perimeter of the command center." "What's going on?" Old Zhong asked urgently. It's that abandoned chemical plant in the eastern suburbs." The team member's voice trembled. "A group of armed thugs has taken hostages. Inside might be the mayor's daughter." "The mayor's daughter?" My heart sank slightly. Old Zhong gasped and immediately began frantically packing his things. I put down the rag and stood up outside the window. On the training ground, SWAT vehicles were already flashing their lights, and the team members, fully armed, were quickly assembling. The atmosphere was so tense you could wring water from it. The team member caught his breath, as if just noticing me, his eyes flickering with a complicated expression before he added, Captain Zhu wants Sister Jiang to come over too. Maybe we need logistical support." After saying that, he hurried off. Old Zhong looked at me, opened his mouth, but in the end said nothing, just shoved the walkie-talkie into my hands. "Let's go." Chapter 11. Inside the command center, the atmosphere had dropped to freezing point. On the massive electronic screen, an aerial view and an internal structural cross-section of the chemical plant were displayed. Several red dots, representing the positions of the rioters and hostages, were concentrated in the control room at the deepest part of the factory. The director's face was ashen as he paced back and forth in front of the screen, hands clasped behind his back. Standing beside him, Zhu Lin was clad in combat gear, his brow furrowed tightly as he delivered his report. "There are 7 to 8 individuals on the other side, with unknown equipment, but they definitely have automatic firepower. The control room has a complex structure, with only one narrow passageway for approach. A direct assault carries extremely high risks." "What about the hostages?" The director interrupted him, his voice hoarse. "Confirmed 7 hostages, including one young woman whose characteristics closely match the mayor's daughter." Zhu Lin's voice grew low. A wave of suppressed gasps echoed through the command center. The mayor was in the adjacent small conference room, watching everything unfold via video link. Pressure, like a tangible weight, pressed down on everyone's hearts. "Where's the negotiator?" the director asked. "They're trying to communicate, but the other party refuses to talk. They've only given us an hour, demanding a helicopter and 5 million in cash." "Impossible," the director said firmly. "Tell them the money can be negotiated. But the helicopter is absolutely out of the question. Once they leave the control room, the hostages will be in even greater danger. Then Zhu Lin's forehead was beaded with sweat. The director suddenly stopped in his tracks, pointing at a spot on the screen. It was a slender pipe above the control room, ventilation pipe. Can we break through from here? A long-range sniper shot could pierce it, deploy a flashbang or tear gas, create chaos, and create an opportunity for the assault team. All eyes were fixed on Julin. Julin's Adam's apple bobbed. He stared at the ventilation duct for a few seconds, his face gradually paling. Director, that duct's diameter is too small, and it has reinforced internal structures, with an extremely tricky angle. Based on the sniper positions we can currently set up, it would require a precise shot from over 1,500 meters away, and the bullet would need to penetrate 3 layers of obstacles made of different materials. His voice was parched. This is nearly an impossible mission. No one in the entire SWAT team can do it. Inside the command center, a deathly silence fell, only the faint hum of the instruments running. The director stared fixedly at Julin, his gaze as if trying to burn right through him. No one? You're telling me there's no one? Then what the hell are we keeping you snipers for, just to sit around and do nothing? Julin's hand, hanging at his side, clenched tightly into a fist, his knuckles turning white. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. That sense of helpless despair nearly overwhelmed him at that moment. His gaze inadvertently swept over me, standing on the outskirts of the command center in my gray logistics uniform. His eyes suddenly lit up. It was as if he had grasped the last lifeline. With a desperate, complex mix of emotions driving him, he pushed aside those around him and rushed to my side in a few quick steps. Jiang Xianyu, his voice, distorted by excitement, drew the attention of everyone present. You can do it, right? He stared intently into my eyes, his tone carrying a plea he might not even have been aware of, at that distance, from that angle, only you have ever managed it before. The assessment, that was an accident. I know, right now. His words abruptly stopped, because he saw the expression on my face, so calm it was almost indifferent. The director also looked over, his gaze carrying scrutiny and a faint glimmer of hope. Jiang Xianyu, the director asked gravely, is what Captain Ju said true? Are you confident? Julin's eyes were filled with urgency and impatience. Jiang Xianyu, speak up, this is a critical moment. Lives are at stake. I look at him, looking at this man who once tore up my credentials and told me to go make tea. Watching the undisguised desire in his eyes at this moment, the desire to use me to get out of this predicament in the command center, everyone's gaze was fixed on me, awaiting my response. Silence, like a rising tide, it submerged everything. Just as Julin was about to urge me again, I moved slowly. I raised my hand, but not to take the headphones he was offering, the ones that symbolized a return to the sniper position, but reached for the thermos cup on the table next to me, the one I had been holding all along. Inside the cup was freshly brewed Longjing tea, picked before the Qingming festival, made just this morning. It was still warm. I unscrewed the lid, a faint, elegant aroma of tea wafted gently through the air. It stood in stark contrast to the tense, gunpowder-like atmosphere in the command center. Amid Julin's suddenly frozen expression, under the astonished gaze of the bureau chief, under the incredulous gaze of everyone, I gently handed the cup to Julin. The corner of my mouth lifted into a faint yet unmistakable curve. My voice was soft, yet loud enough for everyone to hear. Sorry, Captain, right now, I'm just here to make tea. Chapter 12. Time seemed to freeze in the command center. You could hear a pin drop, with only the rhythmic ticking of instruments drumming against everyone's eardrums. Julin's face visibly drained of color, turning from deathly pale to ashen gray, and finally flushing into a purplish-red hue reminiscent of liver. He stared fixedly at the thermos I handed over, his lips trembling as if trying to say something, yet unable to utter a single coherent syllable. That clear, bright tea now seemed like the most malicious mockery. The director's brows were knotted tightly, his gaze sweeping between me and Julin, filled with suspicion and a rising fury. What's going on? His voice was a suppressed storm. Julin, you'd better explain this clearly. Julin snapped back to reality as if struck by a whip. He avoided my gaze, turning to the director and speaking rapidly, with a flustered defense. Director, Jiang Xianyu was reassigned to the logistics department after failing the previous assessment. She's just acting out. At such a critical moment, she actually failed the assessment. The director interrupted him, his gaze sharp as a knife. I recall Jiang Xianyu is the team's record holder. Yes, but in the last assessment, she missed all 3 shots. Julin's voice rose an octave, as if that would make his argument more convincing. Her condition was extremely unstable. According to regulations, I've already revoked her sniper qualification. Revoked her qualification. The director's gaze swept over Julin before settling on me, scrutinizing. Who approved it? Julin's breath hitched. I held the thermos cup, my fingers steady, feeling the warmth emanating from the cup's surface. The fragrance of tea wafted through the air. Julin struggled to speak. I am the team leader, and I have the authority to make temporary decisions regarding team members who are not meeting the required standards. Nonsense. The director slammed the control console with a loud bang. Who gave you the authority to casually revoke the qualifications of a top-tier sniper? Julin trembled all over from the roar. Lowering his head and not daring to argue further, everyone in the command center held their breath, watching this sudden storm with varied expressions. The director's chest heaved violently. He glared fiercely at Julin, then turned his gaze to me, his tone forcibly softened but still carrying an undeniable authority. Comrade Jiang Xianyu. He used the long unheard term comrade. The situation is urgent now. The mayor's daughter is in critical danger. I hope you can prioritize the greater good and set aside personal grudges for now. If you have the ability to complete this sniper mission, I, in the name of the bureau chief, will immediately restore all your qualifications and benefits. The promise is tempting. Prioritize the greater good, a very familiar tune. I tilted my head slightly, looking at the director, then at Julin, whose face was ashen. Then, I gently shook my head. Director, you may have misunderstood. My voice remained calm. I'm not throwing a tantrum. I raised the thermos cup in my hand. I'm just stating a fact. Captain Ju personally revoked my sniper license, saying to my face that I can't even hold a gun steady and only deserve to make tea in logistics. I'm simply following the captain's orders. After all, I paused, my gaze sweeping over Julin's violently trembling fingers, the curve of my lips deepening slightly. Obeying orders is a soldier's duty, isn't it? Chapter 13. Julin abruptly raised his head. His eyes bloodshot with extreme fury and humiliation. He probably never imagined that the words and commands he had once imposed on me would, at this very moment, be thrown back in his face in exactly the same way, becoming the boulder that seals off his last chance of survival. The director stared at me intently, his eyes filled with disbelief and a sense of outraged offense. He probably had never encountered a subordinate who dared to be so unaware of the bigger picture. At such a critical moment, Jiang Xianyu, his voice carried a final warning. Do you know the consequences of refusing an order? Consequences? I raised my eyes to meet his overwhelmingly intense gaze. The consequences, I said slowly, word by word, with utmost clarity. I am still just a tea brewer, and the person who could have completed that mission. My gaze shifted to Julin, whose face had turned ashen, and to the snipers beside him, equally pale, was personally pushed out of the SWAT team by Captain Ju. The moment the words fell, beep, 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 on the console, the countdown timer representing the thug's ultimatum emitted a piercing alarm. The red numbers ticked away mercilessly. 00000057. Time is running out. The rioters have clearly lost their patience. The negotiator's anxious voice came through the communication channel. The other side is losing control. I repeat, the other side is losing control. They demand to see the helicopter immediately. Otherwise they will begin executing the hostages. The command center erupted in chaos, panic spreading like a plague. The mayor's furious roar could even be faintly heard from the neighboring conference room. The director's expression completely changed. He looked at the screen, then at me, then at Julin, who was on the verge of collapsing, veins bulging on his forehead. He suddenly kicked a nearby chair, creating a loud noise. Julin, you've really done it this time. Julin trembled all over, his lips quivering, but not a single word could escape him. The look he gave me was filled with desperate pleading. Unfortunately, it was too late. I lowered my head and gently blew on the warm steam rising from the thermos. The tea leaves slowly unfurled in the water like a silent dance. Chapter 14. Chief, let me try. A voice abruptly rang out, trembling with a desperate gamble. It was Lin Jingjing. She had somehow changed into combat gear and pushed her way to the front, her face wearing a deliberately crafted look of determination and bravery. Although I lack experience, my training performance has always been excellent. Captain Ju can vouch for me. I'm willing to take the risk to save the hostages." Her words were like a lifeline, instantly giving the nearly desperate Ju Lin and some of the leaders a glimmer of hope. Ju Lin seemed to have grasped something and immediately chimed in, his tone urgent. "Yes, Chief, Jingjing is very talented. During training, she maintained a high hit rate even at the 800-meter target. Let her give it a try. It's better than some people deserting at the last minute." He shot me a fierce, meaningful glare. Deserting at the last minute, what a clever choice of words. The director looked at Lin Jingjing, his eyes filled with obvious hesitation and doubt. "Lin Jingjing, this isn't training. This is real combat. Over 1,500 meters, multiple layers of obstacles, the slightest deviation, and the hostage could. I know the risks." Lin Jingjing straightened her chest, interrupting the director's words. Her voice rose, carrying a theatrical sense of tragedy. "But I am willing to give everything for the mission, for the safety of the hostage. Please give me this opportunity, Director. I believe I can do it." Her gaze swept over me, filled with undisguised provocation and smugness, as if to say, "Look, in the end, it's still me standing here to shoulder the heavy responsibility." Ju Lin also seemed to have regained his composure, repeatedly saying, "Director, the situation is urgent. We can't hesitate any longer. I believe in Jingjing." The director looked at the constantly decreasing countdown on the screen, then at Lin Jingjing's expression of facing death without fear, and finally gritted his teeth. "All right, Lin Jingjing, proceed to sniper position 1 immediately. Keep the communication line open and await my instructions." "Yes," Lin Jingjing responded loudly, giving a not-so-standard military salute. Before turning and walking away quickly, she deliberately glanced at me, a look filled with the triumphant swagger of a victor. Ju Ling let out a long sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He looked at the director with gratitude in his eyes. Most of the others also showed expressions of relief. It seems the problem has found a solution. Only a few of the older team members furrowed their brows, their eyes filled with concern. I held the slightly cooled tea and gently swirled it, watching the tea leaves spin at the bottom of the cup. "Sniper position 1, that's an exposed spot. The wind direction is variable, and the rangefinder is prone to interference from the complex electromagnetic environment of the factory area." Moreover, given Lin Jingjing's limited combat experience and psychological resilience, I lowered my gaze. I closed the lid of the thermos. It made a soft click sound. Chapter 15. The command center's large screen switched to the perspective of Lin Jingjing's sniper position. The image was slightly shaky, and her slightly hurried breathing could be heard through the communication channel. "Sniper position 1 in place." Her voice struggled to remain calm, but there was a barely noticeable tremor at the end. The director picked up the communicator, his tone grave. "Lin Jingjing, report the situation. Clear line of sight, can observe the target ventilation duct entrance." Lin Jingjing paused briefly before adding, "Wind speed, the wind speed is a bit high, but I can manage." Ju Lin stared intently at the screen, his hands clenched into fists on the console, knuckles turning white from the strain. "Jingjing, stay calm, just follow your usual training routine," he said into the microphone, his voice deliberately softened with encouragement. "Understood, Captain Ju." Lin Jingjing's voice steadied a bit. The control room fell silent, everyone holding their breath as they watched the real-time footage transmitted on the screen. The slender ventilation duct opening appeared distant and blurry in the crosshairs. "The rangefinder is being jammed. The data is fluctuating wildly." Lin Jingjing's voice came through again, tinged with a hint of panic. I'll manually calculate the distance. Approximately 1,600 meters, 1,600 meters, even farther than estimated, and that's a manual calculation under jamming conditions." The faces of the veteran snipers grew even more grim, exchanging worried glances with one another. Ju Lin's Adam's apple bobbed as he forced himself to stay calm. "It's fine. Adjust the parameters and trust yourself." "Yes," Lin Jingjing replied. What followed was a silence that stretched for over 10 seconds, broken only by her increasingly heavy breathing. "She is adjusting, taking aim. Everyone can feel the tension that is almost frozen in the air. I'm ready." Her voice carries a sense of desperate resolve. The director takes a deep breath, glances toward the direction of the small conference room nearby, and gives the order in a low voice, "Sniper position. Choose your own timing. Penetrate the target's ventilation duct." "Understood." In the communication channel came the sound of Lin Jingjing's final deep breath. Then, bang! A crisp gunshot came through the microphone, echoing in the silent command center. Everyone's heart leaped into their throats with that gunshot, eyes fixed intently on the screen. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. The anticipated scenario of the pipeline being pierced and special ammunition being deployed did not occur. The pipeline opening in the crosshairs remained intact. It was a miss. A wave of suppressed gasps and sighs echoed through the command center. Julin's face instantly turned as pale as paper. "No, impossible," Lin Jingjing cried out, her voice filled with disbelief and panic. "I clearly aimed. It was the wind speed." "Yes." The wind speed suddenly changed. "Steady, again," Julin roared into the microphone, veins bulging on his forehead. "Yes, yes." The image stabilized once more, and one could sense Lin Jingjing struggling to control her trembling arm. The second aim took even longer. Her breathing grew heavier, even carrying a faint sob. Bang! The second gunshot rang out. Still, there was no effect. The pipe opening remained completely still, as if mocking her most cruelly. "Ah!" Lin Jingjing let out a scream of utter despair. "Why can't I hit it? Why?" Her emotions were clearly out of control. "Lin Jingjing, calm down," the director shouted sternly into the microphone, but it was already too late. Over the communication channel came her tearful, incoherent cries. "It's the gun. The gun must be faulty, or the parameters are wrong. It's impossible to hit from that far away. You're just making things difficult for me." "Jingjing, shut up." Julin's voice was frantic and furious, its pitch completely altered. Yet, even worse news arrived. The negotiator's terrified voice cut into the main channel. "The rioters are enraged by the gunfire. They've dragged out a hostage. It's a young girl. They claim that if the next shot misses, they'll start executing." On the screen, the feed switched to a blurry image. Captured by a drone in the small observation window of the control room, a young girl in light-colored clothes was roughly shoved forward, a thug pressing a gun against her temple. The desperate struggle of the girl, like a needle, pierced deeply into everyone's eyes. "The mayor's daughter," confirmed to be the mayor's daughter. The intelligence officer's voice carried a tone of desperate sobbing. "It's over." These two words surfaced in everyone's mind. The chief's body swayed, steadied by someone beside him. He suddenly turned his head, his bloodshot eyes first glaring fiercely at Julin, whose face was ashen and nearly collapsed. Then, like a tangible searchlight, his gaze abruptly fixed on me, filled with a final, desperate madness. Chapter 16, Jiang Shenyu. The director's voice was hoarse, carrying a sense of pressure that bordered on collapse. He rushed up to me in a few steps, completely disregarding his image, his finger almost poking at the tip of my nose. "Now, immediately. Right away, get to the sniper position." His spittle nearly sprayed onto my face. "I order you in my capacity as the director. All your duties and qualifications are hereby restored. All past matters will be forgiven. Just complete the mission. Hurry, go now." Behind him, Julin also looked up at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of extreme humiliation and a final glimmer of hope. His lips trembled, but no sound came out. Everyone in the command center was looking at me. Their gazes were filled with pleading, urgency, and the desperation of clutching at the last straw in a hopeless situation. The countdown continued to tick away mercilessly. 000037. The threat of the mob, the cries of the hostages, faintly transmitted through the channel like a death warrant from hell. I watched the director's face contorted with extreme agitation. I watched Julin's precarious and disheveled state. Then, my gaze slowly swept across this command center filled with despair and panic. Finally, it settled back on the director's face. I gently shook my head. The movement was slow, yet carried an undeniable firmness. "Director, an order requires due process." My voice, in the dead silence, was terrifyingly clear. My sniper certification was personally torn up and officially revoked by Captain Ju. "Your verbal reinstatement does not comply with regulations." The director's eyes instantly widened, as if he had heard a tale from the Arabian Nights. "You," he trembled with rage, his finger pointing at me. After stammering "you" for a long time, he suddenly turned around and roared at Ju Lin like a wild beast. Ju Lin, are you fucking deaf? Her credentials, now, immediately, restore them. Ju Lin trembled violently, as if struck by lightning. He looked at me. His eyes filled with extreme humiliation and struggle, under my calm gaze, under the director's murderous stare, and under the silent pressure from everyone trembling. He slowly pulled out a blank qualification application form from the folder he carried with him. He took out his own seal again. His hand was trembling so badly he could barely hold the pen. He bent over, pressing the form against the console, and began to fill in my name. Each stroke seemed to take all the strength in his body. He made 2 mistakes, crossed them out, and started over. Sweat trickled down his pale cheeks, falling onto the paper and spreading into a small, damp stain. When stamping the seal, his hand slipped 3 times before he barely managed to press the bright red captain's seal into the restored qualification column. Then, he picked up that thin sheet of paper, which felt as heavy as 1,000 pounds. Step by step, he shuffled over to me, head down, not daring to meet my eyes. He handed over that form with both hands. His demeanor was unprecedentedly humble. I looked at the form he handed over. The handwriting above appears somewhat crooked due to the trembling of the hand. The bright red seal, however, is crystal clear. I reach out my hand, but not to take that form. Instead, he once again picked up the thermos cup on the table, which had long gone cold. He gave it a gentle shake. The remaining tea inside collided with the cup walls, producing a hollow sound. Under Ju Lin's suddenly despairing gaze, under the director's gaze that was almost murderous, I raised my eyes, looked at the director, and said with a hint of perfectly measured confusion, "Director, have you forgotten? My current work relationship is with the logistics department. Transferring positions also requires following procedures. Moreover, my gaze finally fell on that application form, a symbol of humiliation and compromise, and a faint smile curled at the corner of my mouth. A single application form is probably not enough. The one that was torn up was my firearm license, number TX07, along with the special qualification certification for top sniper, issued by the headquarters, the only one of its kind in the country. These all require the original documents. Chapter 17. The words original document pierced through the command center's last shred of hope like 2 icy bullets. The director's face flushed from crimson to a deathly pale gray. He abruptly turned his head, his gaze like a venomous dagger, sharply fixed on Ju Lin. Ju Lin seemed as if all his bones had been pulled out, staggering and barely managing to stay upright by leaning on the console, preventing himself from collapsing. His lips trembled, his gaze unfocused, as if he couldn't comprehend the meaning of those 2 words. The original document, he repeated unconsciously, his voice hoarse like a broken bellows. Torn, already torn, then go find it. The director erupted with a deafening roar, grabbing Ju Lin by the collar and spraying him with spittle. "I don't care what you have to do, glue it back together, reissue it, 10 minutes, no, 5 minutes, I want to see it placed in front of her, otherwise, I'll strip you of that uniform." Ju Lin was so terrified by the shouting that he scrambled out of the command center, his retreating figure as pitiful as a stray dog. A deathly silence fell over the command center, only the ticking of the countdown timer, the barely suppressed roars of the mayor from the neighboring conference room, and the desperate sobs of the hostage over the communication channel blended together into a symphony of despair. 000027 time, like sand slipping through one's fingers, rushes by every second, pounds on everyone's heart. Several leaders gathered around the director, whispering urgently, their eyes anxiously darting toward the door from time to time. "Someone is trying to contact the headquarters to inquire about the supplementary procedures for special qualification certification, but distant water cannot quench immediate thirst." Someone is quietly complaining, casting unfriendly glances at me, thinking I am too cold-blooded and lack a sense of the bigger picture. I unscrew the thermos again and slowly pour the cold tea inside into the nearby sink. The brown water stains meander and flow through the white porcelain sink, like some kind of ominous omen. Chapter 18. 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Ju Lin rushed back as if he had been fished out of water, drenched all over, his face deathly pale. He held a transparent file bag tightly in his hand. Inside the bag was the sniper certificate that had been torn in half and clumsily taped back together with clear adhesive tape. The crack in the photo looked like a hideous scar. There were also a few crumpled documents, clearly just printed, still warm to the touch. This is a temporary replacement notice for firearm permits and special qualification certifications. He rushed up to me, his breathing heavy like a worn-out bellows, pressing the document folder firmly onto the console and pushing it toward me. His knuckles turned white from the excessive force. He looked up at me, eyes filled with bloodshot. Within them lay humiliation, pleading, collapse, and a deeply hidden, almost uncontrollable resentment. "Here you go." His voice was broken. "The original, the reissued ones. They're all here." He stared fixedly at my lips, awaiting my judgment. The gaze of the entire command center focused once again. The director took a step forward, his voice hoarse with a final, desperate plea. "Jiang Xianyu, everything is ready. You have no reason to refuse now. Get to the sniper position immediately." I stared at the transparent file folder on the control console. I stared at the original inside, covered in tape marks like the patches on a beggar's clothes. I stared into Julin's eyes, which seemed on the verge of bleeding. Then, I reached out my hand, picked up that file folder. Julin and the bureau chief both let out a sigh of relief almost simultaneously. Around them, a faint, relieved exhalation also rippled through the air. However, my fingers pinched a corner of the document folder with a gentle shake. Rustle, the pasted sniper certificate, along with those brand new replacement documents, slipped out from the unsealed file bag, drifting and floating, scattered all over the ground, right at my feet, covered in a layer of cold dust unique to the command center. I lowered my head, looking at the pile of paper scraps at my feet that represented qualification and command. Then, I lifted my foot, the gray, logistics-issued work shoe sole, stained with a few T-marks and dust, slowly, steadily stepping on that sniper certificate covered with tape marks, stepping on the photograph, on that clear crack. It also stepped on Julin's pupils, which had suddenly contracted to their extreme limit. The sole even gave a slight twist, ensuring that the rough tread pattern could be clearly imprinted on my calm face in the photo. I raised my head, meeting Julin's gaze, which in that instant became hollow, lifeless, as if his soul had been drained away, facing the director's expression, which was as if he had seen a ghost. Completely frozen, facing the stunned, disbelieving gazes of everyone in the command center, the corners of the mouth curled into a chillingly cold arc. The voice was not loud, yet it struck like thunder, echoing in everyone's ears. "You've dirted it. It seems it still can't be used." Chapter 19. Dead silence. In the command center, there was a suffocating, dead silence. The kind that felt as if even breathing had been cut off. Everyone seemed frozen, watching as the sole of my shoe still pressed down on the sniper certificate, the one covered in tape, representing qualification and orders. Julin's eyes were fixed on my feet, his pupils dilated, his lips moving but unable to make a sound. His body began to tremble uncontrollably, as if it might fall apart at any moment. The director's face turned from ashen to livid, then flushed a deep, purplish red. His chest heaved violently, his finger trembling as he pointed at me, his throat emitting a choked, guttural sound, as if something was stuck in it. You, he stammered for a long moment before suddenly spitting out a mouthful of bloody saliva and letting out a roar that sounded almost inhuman. "Jiang Xianyu, what do you want?" That roar seemed to break some kind of seal in the communication channel. The negotiator's voice, filled with terror and despair, tore through the stagnant air. They fired a warning shot. It hit right next to the hostage's feet. The next one will be the hostage herself. 30-second countdown. They're only giving us 30 seconds. On the screen, the footage transmitted by the drone showed the young girl who had been taken hostage already collapsed on the ground, with the barrel of the assailant's gun pressed firmly against the back of her head. Despair, like a cold tide, completely engulfed the entire command center. 30 seconds, someone murmured in a broken voice, slumping into their chair. "It's over, it's all over." The life of the mayor's daughter, along with everyone's future, is now in the final countdown. Julin seemed to have the last of his strength drained by these words. His legs gave way, and he collapsed to his knees, his hands propping him up on the ground before my feet, his head hanging low, his shoulders trembling violently. It wasn't crying, it was the kind of despair that shatters you to the core, leaving you trembling so hopelessly that you can't even cry. The director suddenly shut his eyes, and when he opened Them again, they were filled with a blood-red madness. He no longer looked at me but instead, like a dying beast, scanned the entire command center and let out a final, hoarse roar. Who else can go? Who else? Anyone. As long as they can complete this mission, I'll make them deputy director. I'll give them my position. Despite the heavy reward, there was only a deathly silence. No one moved, no one dared to move. It was an impossible mission, a realm that only the legendary top sniper, who had been disqualified, could possibly touch. All eyes, once again involuntarily, focused on me with the last, humble, messiah-like expectation. In this extreme silence and despair, slowly, I raised my foot, bent down, picked up the sniper certificate from the ground, which bore a clear shoe print and was covered in dust, gently brushed off the dust with a finger. Then, under Ju Lin's suddenly raised gaze, which was filled with disbelief and a faint glimmer of hope under the chief's gaze, which was fixed like a man clutching at his last straw, I casually stuffed the tattered document into an evidence bag held by a team member nearby. Ready to seal off the scene, I pulled the seal shut. A soft ripping sound was heard. Evidence, I began, my voice calm and steady, as if stating the most ordinary fact, needs to be archived. The faint glimmer that had just ignited in Ju Lin's eyes instantly extinguished. It turned completely to ashes. The chief's body swayed, and a mouthful of blood suddenly sprayed out, splattering onto the control console. A shocking sight. 20 seconds, the countdown roared through the comms channel. I turned around, no longer looking at the hellish scene behind me, no longer heeding the desperate countdown, towards the door of the command center, took a step, 1 step, 2 steps. The grey logistics uniform cut a cold trajectory through the air thick with the scent of blood and despair. Just as my fingers were about to touch the door handle, from behind me came Ju Lin's desperate, blood-soaked wail, as if he had poured every last ounce of his strength into it. The sound was broken, hoarse, filled with the utmost humiliation and collapse. Jiang Xianyu, I beg you, I'm kneeling for you. Bang! It was the sound of knees heavily hitting the floor, dull, yet resounding. Chapter 20. The muffled thud of knees hitting the ground echoed like a final funeral bell, striking at the heart of everyone. In the command center, even the ticking of the countdown seemed to vanish. Everyone froze, staring in disbelief at the once arrogant captain, now collapsed on the cold floor like a broken dog. Pleading with the back of a logistics officer as if his life depended on it, the director's second mouthful of blood caught in his throat, making a strange gurgling sound. He leaned against the control console, barely keeping himself from collapsing as well. My fingers, resting on the door handle, came to a halt. No turning back. Ju Lin's voice trembled violently, choked with sobs, each word seeming to be forced out from a torn throat. It's my fault. I'm the scum. I'm not human. I shouldn't have torn your certificate. Shouldn't have said those damn words, and I shouldn't have transferred you to logistics. He suddenly raised his hand and slapped himself twice, the sharp, clear sound piercing the silence. I was blind. I was a fool. Jiang Xianyu, Sister Jiang, my ancestor, please be magnanimous, I beg you. Save the hostages. Save everyone. I'll serve you like a slave. I'll fetch tea and water for you from now on. Please, he spoke while pressing his forehead firmly against the ground, producing a dull, rhythmic thud. It was as if he were kowtowing. His posture was so humble it seemed to sink into the dust. In the communication channel, the countdown ticked away like a death knell. 10, 9. The director violently pushed away those supporting him, his eyes bloodshot, almost kneeling down as well, his voice hoarse and distorted. Jiang Xianyu, name your conditions. I guarantee it with my integrity, just as long as you can take action. 8, 7. I slowly turned around. My gaze calmly swept over Ju Lin, who was kneeling on the ground, his forehead bruised and swollen, tears and snot streaming down his face. Then it swept over the chief, whose mouth was stained with blood and whose eyes were filled with despair, sweeping over the surrounding faces, each one etched with fear and pleading. Time seemed to stretch out. 6, 5. Ju Lin raised his head, his face smeared with snot, tears, and bloodshot eyes, his gaze vacant, reduced to the most primal plea. 4, 3. I let out a soft sigh as if in resignation, yet also with a sense of relief that the dust had finally settled. At the moment when the countdown was about to reach 2, I spoke. My voice was not loud, yet it clearly cut through all the noise and despair. The gun, just one word. The director froze for a moment, then erupted into a frenzy of joy, as if he had just survived a disaster, almost shouting, "Quick! Get her gun! Hurry!" Ju-Lin seemed to be struck by an electric shock. Scrambling to get up but collapsing again due to weak legs, he pointed frantically toward the outside, stammering incoherently, "Crow feather, her crow feather, in the warehouse, go get it." Two team members shot out like arrows from a bow. 2. The countdown continued. I stood in place, closing my eyes slightly, blocking out all the chaos and noise behind me. In my mind, the structural diagram of the chemical plant, wind speed, humidity, angle, trajectory, flashed by instantly. All data operates like a precision instrument, converging. 1. The moment the countdown reaches 0, the command center falls into complete silence. Everyone held their breath, waiting for the sound of the gunshot symbolizing death and the hostage scream to come through the communication channel. However, nothing at all. Only the curses of the thugs grew more frantic as they waited. They seemed to hesitate too, or perhaps they were savoring this final torment now. The door to the command center was violently thrown open. The team member stumbled in, clutching a long, dust-covered gun case, his face flushed from the frantic run. The gun, crow feather. I opened my eyes, my gaze fell on that familiar gun case. Without looking at Ju-Lin, who had collapsed on the ground, and ignoring the urging gaze of the director, I stepped forward, opened the box. The black gun lay there quietly, its lines sleek and cold, like a sleeping leopard. A thin layer of dust had indeed settled on it. I reached out, my fingertips brushing over the gun's body, feeling that familiar, cold touch. The dust was wiped away, revealing a dark, subdued sheen beneath. Then, I picked up the specialized maintenance oil and soft cloth that a teammate quickly handed over from beside me. Under the gaze of everyone on the verge of collapse, I began to slowly and deliberately wipe my gun. The movements were focused and meticulous, as if everything around me did not exist. Chapter 21. Time seemed to stretch infinitely the moment I picked up the maintenance oil and the cloth. Every second felt like a century. The director stared fixedly at my movements as I wiped the gun barrel, his eyes bulging, bloodshot, and a suppressed, almost suffocating gurgling sound coming from his throat. He wanted to urge, to roar, but his remaining reason told him that there could be no further interference. Ju-Lin knelt collapsed on the ground, head tilted back, mouth unconsciously agape, eyes vacant as he watched my deliberate movements, his body still trembling uncontrollably. The bruises and bloodstains on his forehead, mixed with tears and snot, made him look particularly wretched and pitiful. In the communication channel, the curses of the rioters grew louder and more frantic. The muffled sobs of the hostages, intermittent, felt like a dull knife sawing at everyone's nerves. "They're looking for a lighter," the negotiator suddenly screamed in terror, his voice cracking. "They're going to ignite the leaking chemical materials. They want to die together." Die together. The command center instantly erupted into chaos. Panic broke out like a plague. "Hurry, Jiang Xianyu, please, hurry." The director finally broke down, screaming with a sob, completely disregarding his image. Ju-Lin seemed jolted awake by these words, suddenly slamming his head against the ground with a dull thud. "Thud, quick, shoot, there's no time." I turned a deaf ear, fingertips pinched the velvet cloth, slowly rotating and wiping along the spiral grooves of the barrel once and then again, ensuring every inch of metal was restored to its optimal condition. Make sure the top is free from even a speck of warehouse dust and the nauseating scent of certain individuals. The faint scent of maintenance oil disperses in the air, thick with blood and panic. Chapter 22. When the last inch of the barrel is polished to a dark, gleaming finish, reflecting the pale light of the command center, I set down the velvet cloth. I picked up the 3 specially prepared armor-piercing rounds from the tray beside me. The brass bullets gleamed with a cold sheen under the light. I took the first one, fingertips feel the coldness and weight of the metal, then, unhurriedly, press it into the magazine. Click, a soft click, clearly audible in the dead silence of the command center. Ju-Lin and the chief almost simultaneously stopped trembling and roaring, staring intently at my movements, even holding their breath. I picked up the second bullet, loaded it in again. Click, the curses of the mob seemed to draw nearer. The faint sound of a lighter's gear grinding could be heard. The shadow of death loomed over. I picked up the third bullet, it was also the last one, before pressing it into the magazine. My movements paused slightly, my gaze, seemingly unintentionally, swept over Ju Lin, who was kneeling on the ground as if awaiting the final judgment, swept over his hand that had once torn my documents. Now covered in dust and blood, Ju Lin met my gaze, his entire body suddenly stiffening, his eyes erupting with extreme fear and pleading. I withdrew my gaze, steadily loaded the third bullet into the magazine. Click, 3 rounds, loaded and ready. I close the magazine, my palm glides over the cold barrel, then I lift Crowfeather with one hand, with the other hand. He picked up the prepared access card to the top-floor sniper position, turned around, walked out of the command center. His steps remained unhurried and steady. It formed the most brutal contrast with the deathly silence and panic, as intense as the moment before a volcanic eruption, that lay behind. Just as my figure was about to disappear through the doorway, Ju Lin seemed to muster the last ounce of strength in his life, letting out a hoarse, tearful plea. Jiang Shenyu, what observational data do you need? Wind speed, humidity, my footsteps did not stop, only one calm, unruffled sentence drifted back with the wind, clearly reaching everyone's ears. No need, finished the calculations. While cleaning the gun, Chapter 23, the private elevator leading to the top-floor sniper position operated with unusual smoothness. The metal walls of the cabin were polished to a mirror-like finish, reflecting my figure dressed in grey logistics uniform and carrying a black sniper rifle out of place. Yet strangely harmonious, the elevator numbers silently flickered. I didn't look at those numbers, just slightly closed my eyes. In my mind, there is a 3-dimensional structural diagram of the chemical plant's control room, the material thickness of the ventilation ducts, the density and angle of each layer of obstacles, the current turbulent airflow data at high altitude, and the remaining kinetic energy of the bullet after flying 1,600 meters, all variables, like rushing rivers, collide, calculate, and merge in the depths of consciousness. Ultimately, they converge into 3 clear, invisible trajectories: 1, to penetrate the duct and deploy special ammunition; 1, backup; and another 1. My fingertip gently tapped on the cold barrel of the gun. The elevator emitted a soft ding, the door slowly opened, the wind from the top floor instantly rushed in, carrying the sharp chill and the scent of dust unique to the city's high altitudes. Chapter 24. The sniper position was a semi-open platform. The view is excellent, offering a panoramic view of most of the city, with the chemical plant in the distance resembling a grey building block model. The wind is strong, causing the stray hairs on my forehead to constantly brush against my eyes. I don't set up the rifle immediately. Instead, I walk to the edge of the platform, extend my hand, and feel the strength and direction of the wind as it passes through my fingers. Subtle changes flow through the fingertips. Then, I kneel on one knee, steadily position Crowfeather on the preset mount, press my cheek against the cold stock. That familiar sensation quietly awakened something long dormant within the body. His eyes drew close to the high-powered scope. The view instantly zoomed in: the abandoned chemical plant, the small observation window of the control room, the swaying figure behind it, and the young girl being held hostage, trembling. Everything was as clear as if it were right before my eyes. I could even see the ferocious scar on the thug's face and the lighter in his hand, flickering with sparks as it opened and closed repeatedly. My breathing becomes slow and deep, all bodily functions adjust to their most precise frequency at this moment. An invisible, absolute control link is established with the rifle in my hands and the distant target. Wind speed, corrected; humidity, fine-tune; gravity, compensate; index finger gently rests on the trigger. First stage, press down. Chapter 25. Command Center. Everyone was staring intently at the main screen. The screen was split into drone footage, the view from Lin Jingjing's sniper position, which was already empty, and the sniper view that had just switched over, belonging to me. The moment my scope steadily locked onto the ventilation duct opening, the entire command center was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. The director clutched his chest, his lips still trembling slightly. Ju Lin had already been helped to a chair on the side, but he remained slumped there, his gaze fixed on the screen, his eyes hollow, as if his soul had been drained away. No one spoke, even their breathing was held light. Only the sound of my steady, almost unchanging breathing, transmitted through the scope, faintly echoed over the communication channel. They are waiting, waiting for that fateful shot. Time ticks away, second by second. The crosshairs in the scope remain steadily fixed on the ventilation duct, without the slightest tremor, as if welded in place. The rioter seemed to have lost his last shred of patience. He raised the lighter, its flame dancing in the scope, reflecting the hostage's eyes. Shut in despair now, my index finger imperceptibly moved. Bang! A dull yet distinctive gunshot echoed through the communication channel. It was different from Lin Jingjing's crisp, uncertain shot. This one carried a steady, air-rending penetrating force in the command center. Everyone's heart skipped a beat at the sound of that gunshot. Eyes instantly focused on the image transmitted by the drone, above the control room. That slender ventilation duct, the anticipated penetration did not occur immediately. Time seemed to freeze for half a second, then, phut, a faint sound, like tearing thick cloth, rang out. A fist-sized hole suddenly burst open on the side of the ventilation duct near the top. Not the designated entrance, it's the side immediately after. Whoosh! Thick white smoke, carrying a pungent odor, surged out from the breach. It instantly flooded the control room below. Success! The first cry of disbelief erupted in the command center, but before the cry could fade away in the scope, my crosshairs moved down by an almost imperceptibly small amount at a speed barely detectable to the naked eye. Almost at the same instant, my index finger pulled the trigger for the second time. Bang! The second gunshot, almost immediately following the lingering echo of the first shot. The dense white smoke, swirling as it poured through the first breach, carried the bullet with pinpoint accuracy. Bang! Shattering the bulletproof glass of the observation window in the control room. Not pierced, shattered. The entire pane of glass instantly turned into countless particles, pouring inward like a waterfall. The figures of the rioters and hostages were instantly swallowed by the billowing white smoke and flying glass shards. Ah! A sudden scream from the thug and the shrieks of the hostages echoed through the communication channel. Chaos, utter chaos. Assault team, go, go, go. The director snapped back to reality, letting out a hoarse, desperate roar. The SWAT officers, who had long been lying in ambush outside the passage, burst into the control room like black lightning, taking advantage of the smoke and chaos. Gunshots, sounds of struggle, shouts, instantly came through the channel. The command center was thrown into chaos. No one was paying attention to the sniper position anymore. Everyone's attention was drawn to the sudden intrusion of the assault team. Except for Zhu Lin, he was still staring intently at the screen. At the sniper's perspective that belonged to me, now completely still in the scope, the white smoke gradually cleared, faintly revealing the subdued terrorists and the successful rescue of the hostages. There was no joy of surviving a disaster in his eyes, only a deepening, icy fear, because he saw that my crosshairs had never left that window from beginning to end, steadily, with an absolute, suffocating sense of control, until the last thug was confirmed to be handcuffed, and the last hostage was safely escorted away. Only then did my crosshairs shift ever so slightly, seemingly, unintentionally, sweeping over a certain empty, worthless abandoned storage tank area on the outskirts of the chemical plant there. It lingered for a brief moment, then it completely moved away. Mission accomplished. My voice came through the communication channel, calm and unruffled, as if the two life-or-death shots just now were merely a casual flick of dust from the gun. Chapter 26. After my words, mission accomplished, the command center fell into a brief, eerie silence. Then, an ear-splitting cheer erupted. The director slumped in his chair, tears streaming down his face, clutching his chest as he gasped for breath, as if he had just been pulled back from the brink of drowning. Several leaders gathered around him, excitedly patting his shoulders, their words tumbling out incoherently. Most of the others also embraced in celebration, the overwhelming joy of survival washing away the earlier despair and panic. Only Zhu Lin, he remained rigidly seated in that chair, his face a deathly pale from excessive blood loss. He stared fixedly at the sniper's perspective on the screen, now empty, his eyes hollow, his lips trembling uncontrollably. He did not join in the celebration, as if that victory had nothing to do with him. No, it did. It was his foolishness and narrow-mindedness that nearly dragged everyone into hell. And now, The person he had pushed away and humiliated with such contempt was the one who, in such an overwhelmingly dominant manner, had saved it all. This contrast corroded his internal organs like venom. His hands, resting on his knees, were tightly clenched, nails digging deep into his palms until they drew blood, yet he felt no pain at all. Chapter 27. Carrying Crow Feather. I took the elevator down from the top-floor sniper position. The elevator doors opened on the first floor. A crowd of people stood outside, the director, various leaders, and quite a few team members. They looked at me, their expressions incredibly complex. There was gratitude, awe, disbelief, and a trace of something barely perceptible, fear. The director was the first to step forward, his face brimming with excitement and an ingratiating smile, a stark contrast to the man who had seemed ready to devour me earlier. Jiang Xianyu. Well done, excellent. You are a hero, a true hero. He reached out, intending to pat my shoulder. Without breaking my stride, I sidestepped, avoiding his hand. The director's smile froze on his face, his hand awkwardly suspended in midair. I didn't look at him. My gaze swept over the crowd and landed on the very back, on the figure trying to shrink into the shadows. Zhu Lin. When he met my eyes, he shuddered, instinctively trying to step back, but was blocked by the people behind him. Gripping my gun, I walked step by step through the crowd that automatically parted for me. Walking towards him, all sounds vanished, everyone held their breath and watched. I stopped in front of him. The distance was very close. I could smell the heavy scent of sweat on him, along with a hint of despair. He didn't dare look at me, keeping his head down, staring at the tips of his shoes, his body trembling slightly. I raised my hand, not to hit him, nor to make any violent move, just to hand the crow feather that had just performed a miraculous feat right in front of him. The gun body was dark, still carrying the residual warmth from the shot. Zhu Lin was stunned, looking up at me in confusion. His eyes were filled with confusion and fear. I looked at him, a faint curve lifting the corner of my mouth. Captain. My voice was not loud, yet it clearly carried through the silent hall. Gun. Returning it to you. Zhu Lin's pupils contracted sharply. He looked at the sniper rifle being handed to him, then at my expressionless face, as if this gun were some kind of hot potato, some terrifying curse. He dared not take it. His hands trembled, tucked behind his back. His throat was dry, producing broken syllables. What's the matter? I tilted my head slightly, my tone carrying just the right amount of confusion. Wasn't the captain's order for me to get lost to logistics and make tea? This sniper rifle. My gaze swept over the cold barrel. Isn't it inappropriate for me to hold it now? Zhu Lin's face instantly turned as pale as paper. He opened his mouth, but not a single word came out. The surrounding leaders' expressions also turned extremely unpleasant. The bureau chief stepped forward, forcing a smile to smooth things over. Jiang Xianyu, look at what you're saying. It was all a misunderstanding before, a misunderstanding. Your ability and qualifications are clear for all to see, of course. You should still use the gun. Not only should you use it, but the Bureau will also record a major merit for you. Commendation, a commendation, I repeated, finally turning my gaze to the director with a hint of amusement. For someone who can't even hold a gun steady and only deserves to make tea in the back office. The director's smile froze completely, his lips twitching as he struggled to find words. I withdrew my gaze and once again extended the gun toward Zhu Lin. The gesture carried an air of undeniable finality. Captain, please take it back. Zhu Lin looked at me, his eyes filled with humiliation, fear, and despair. Finally, trembling, he extended his hands, stained with dust and blood, and, with excruciating slowness, took hold of Crow Feather. The moment the gun touched his hands, his arm sank heavily, as if he were not holding a weapon but a burden of 1,000 pounds. No, it was the final straw that crushed his dignity and future. I watched him take the gun, as if accepting a pillar of shame. Then, I clapped my hands as if trying to brush off something unclean that had tainted them. Turn around. Under the complex and unspoken gazes of everyone, he walked toward the short, old building of the logistics department. His steps remained steady behind him. There was a deathly silence in Zhu Lin's hands. The sniper rifle was so heavy it almost crushed him. Chapter 28. When they returned to the logistics department, old Zhong was standing at the door, rubbing his hands together, his face a mix of excitement and anxiety. Xiao Jiang. No, Sister Jiang. You're incredible, he stammered. The news is spreading like wildfire. 1,600 meters, 3 layers, and you fired 2 shots. My goodness, I nodded at him without saying a word. Then walked over and took my seat on the desk. The unfinished warehouse inventory from the morning was still lying there. That set of chipped teaware was also still in its usual place, as if the earth-shattering sniper attack from just moments ago had been nothing but an illusion. Old Jong followed me in, cautiously watching my expression, hesitating to speak. That, Captain Ju, he finally couldn't hold back, lowering his voice. I heard he locked himself in the captain's office as soon as he got back, refusing to see anyone, and he smashed some things. I picked up a list and began checking it. There was no response. Old Jong awkwardly closed his mouth and sat back in his seat, but he clearly had little interest in working, occasionally stealing glances at me outside the window. The sky gradually darkened. The setting sun cast a tattered golden glow over the training ground. It was all over, yet it felt as though everything had just begun. I picked up the pen and gently crossed out a decommissioned equipment number on the list. The pen tip glided across the paper, emitting a soft rustling sound. It sounded like the prelude to something. Chapter 29. The aftershocks of the chemical plant incident spread like ripples over the following days. The commendation ceremony was grand yet awkward. I sat in a corner of the logistics department, listening as the director on stage, in a passionate tone, attributed the credit to collective effort, sound command, and the bravery of frontline personnel. As for me, the one who actually saved the critical situation, I was only briefly mentioned as a certain technically skilled comrade. No one raised any objections. It was as if those 2 earth-shattering shots were truly just the result of some kind of collective wisdom. Ju Lin did not attend the commendation ceremony. It is said that he took sick leave, shut himself at home, and refused to see anyone. Lin Jingjing, however, did attend, sitting in the front row. Wearing a brand new uniform, she tried her best to straighten her back and maintain her image as a rising star, yet her flickering gaze and the subtle distance from those around her revealed her lack of confidence. After the meeting, the bureau chief personally visited the logistics department. He wore a warm smile on his face, followed by the head of the personnel department, Jiang Shenyu. You've made a great contribution this time. The bureau has decided to adjust your position, the director said in a friendly tone. You'll be transferred back to the original sniper squadron as deputy team leader, with a corresponding increase in benefits. What do you think? Old Jong stood nearby, showing a delighted expression. I set down the tea canister I was organizing and looked up. Chief, I think this place is quite nice. The chief's smile froze for a moment. Jiang Shenyu, you must prioritize the bigger picture. Your talents, my talents, I interrupted him, my tone calm, are quite suited for brewing tea. The head of the personnel department couldn't help but speak up. Comrade Jiang Shenyu, this is the organization's decision, and it's also a recognition of your abilities. Are you sure? I looked at him, my gaze devoid of warmth. Sure that I can't even hold a gun steady, or sure that I only deserve to make tea? The person in charge was left speechless, his face flushed with anger. The director's expression also darkened, but he suppressed his anger. Jiang Shenyu, let bygones be bygones. People need to look forward. The team needs a backbone like you. When I'm needed, I'm the backbone. I slowly stood up, picked up the rag on the table, and began wiping the already spotless surface. When I'm not needed, I'm just trash that can be discarded at will. Director, the work in the logistics department is still work. I stopped what I was doing and looked at him. I think this place suits me better. The director's breathing grew heavy. He stared at me for a few seconds, the last shred of patience in his eyes completely gone. Fine, very well, he snorted coldly, flicking his sleeve as he turned to leave. Jiang Shenyu, remember the choice you made today. The head of the personnel department hurriedly followed him. Old Jong looked at me with concern. Xiao Jiang, why must you make things so difficult for yourself? I sat back down, picked up a teacup, and held it up to the light to examine the small chip. Uncle Jong, I said, the tea has gone cold. It's time to add more hot water. Chapter 30. Ju Lin returned to work. It was a week later. He had lost a lot of weight, with sunken eyes and a scruffy beard. His once crisp uniform now hung loosely on him. He had become withdrawn. No longer as spirited as before, his eyes always seemed to avoid others. especially when he encountered me. He would immediately lower his head and quicken his pace to leave. On the training ground, his once powerful and commanding voice could no longer be heard. Most of the time, he shut himself in his office. The atmosphere in the team became somewhat delicate. The team members looked at me with a mix of awe and curiosity, but no one dared to approach me casually. As for Julin, their gazes were far more complex, filled with sympathy, disdain, and a sense of shared sorrow, like mourning the death of a fellow creature. Lin Jingjing tried to salvage the situation. She began training even harder, trying to prove herself, but some things, once broken, can never be pieced back together. The results she achieved always seemed to others like a deliberate, feeble attempt at proof. Moreover, rumors about her falsifying training data and monopolizing special resources began to circulate quietly within the team. At some point she became irritable and quick-tempered, often losing her temper and throwing things during training. Once, in the equipment room, she cornered me. "Jiang Xianyu, are you satisfied now?" Her eyes were bloodshot, her voice sharp. "You've ruined Ailing. I've become a laughingstock. Are you happy?" I was taking inventory of my gear without looking up. "The path was chosen by yourself," I said. "Don't act all high and mighty here." Lin Jingjing waved her arms excitedly. "Aren't you just taking advantage of your skills to get revenge on purpose? Do you think that makes you so great? Let me tell you, the one Alan truly loves is me. He's just momentarily bewitched by you." I stopped writing and looked up at her. That gaze was very calm. Yet it made Lin Jingjing's following words get stuck in her throat. "Who he loves," I said lightly, "has nothing to do with me. As for revenge," I paused, a faint curve lifting the corner of my mouth. "You think too highly of yourself." After saying that, I walked past her and continued checking the equipment. Lin Jingjing stood in place, her face alternating between green and pale. Finally, she stomped her foot fiercely and rushed out. Chapter 31. The real storm descended without warning. On a calm afternoon, the special investigation team from the headquarters suddenly entered the SWAT team. The team was led by a deputy director from the headquarters, known for his strict impartiality. They immediately sealed all training records, equipment requisition lists, and financial accounts. The investigation's focus pointed directly at Zhu Lin and Lin Jingjing. Rumors were no longer just rumors. Someone had filed a real-name report accusing Zhu Lin of abusing his authority to give Lin Jingjing preferential treatment in training assessments, equipment allocation, and even daily living conditions, seriously violating discipline. The report was accompanied by detailed evidence, including the 3 crates of blank ammunition Lin Jingjing took during that extra training session. Less than 1 crate was actually consumed, and the whereabouts of the rest remain a mystery, including several large, unexplained expenses that suddenly appeared under her name, including the special allowances and resource allocations that Zhu Lin, using his authority as captain, improperly applied for on her behalf, far exceeding the standard limits, even including some overly intimate and disciplinary-compromising surveillance screenshots of the 2 of them inside the captain's office. The evidence is irrefutable. The investigation took only 3 days. The conclusion was quickly reached. Zhu Lin was relieved of all his duties, dismissed from public service, and transferred to judicial authorities for further investigation on suspicion of abuse of power and dereliction of duty. Lin Jingjing was also dismissed, and her unexplained expenditures were placed under investigation. On the day the disciplinary decision was announced, Zhu Lin stood in the office that had once belonged to him as captain, facing the members of the investigation team and several leaders from the bureau. He hung his head, his entire being as if drained of its soul, showing no reaction. When the investigators stepped forward to remove his shoulder insignia and chest badge, he suddenly trembled. He raised his head, his gaze cutting through the crowd, and saw me standing at the end of the corridor, expressionless. His eyes were filled with despair, remorse, and a bone-chilling coldness. He did not struggle. He allowed the symbols that once represented his glory and power to be removed one by one. As if the last layer of his dignity had been stripped away, he staggered as he was escorted away from the SWAT team, his back hunched, like an old man on the brink of death. As he passed by me, he paused for an incredibly brief moment. He seemed to want to say something, but in the end, nothing was said. It's just that the look in his eyes was so hollow it made one's heart tremble. Lin Jingjing's reaction was much more intense. She cried, made a scene, and threw a tantrum in the office. Claiming she was the victim, deceived and used by Ju Lin, she even tried to rush over to confront me but was stopped by the investigation team. Jiang Xianyu, it's you. It must have been you who reported it, you vicious woman, may you die a horrible death. Her shrill curses echoed through the corridor. I looked at her face, twisted with anger and fear as if watching a tedious farce, turned and walked away. Leave behind him was her hysterical wailing and the cold reprimands of the investigation team members. Sunlight streamed in through the corridor windows, bright and glaring, a bit too harsh on the eyes. I raised my hand to block it. At my fingertips, there seemed to linger the faint, cold scent of maintenance oil from that day when I wiped down Crow Feather. Chapter 32. After Ju Lin and Lin Jingjing were taken away, the SWAT team felt as if a depth charge had been dropped into it. The surface quickly returned to calm, but beneath it, undercurrents surged. The position of team leader is temporarily assumed by the deputy director. Discussions about who will succeed as team leader are quietly taking place behind the scenes. Several senior deputy team leaders are somewhat interested, but their gazes always involuntarily drift toward the small building of the logistics department. I remain the tea brewing logistics staff member. Every day, I wipe the tea sets, organize the warehouse, and check the inventory, as if all the disturbances of the outside world had nothing to do with me. It wasn't until a week later that the stern and impartial deputy director of the general administration personally came to the logistics department. He didn't bring any attendants, coming alone, dressed in a crisp uniform, the general's stars on his epaulets glaring in the dimly lit office. Old Zhong was so nervous he nearly knocked over his teacup, standing up. In a fluster, the deputy director waved him off. His gaze settling on me. Comrade Jiang Xianyu, he began, his voice steady, carrying an unquestionable authority. On behalf of the General Bureau, I formally extend an invitation to you. He took out a document and placed it on my desk. Transfer order, directly under the General Bureau. Dark Blade Special Operations Group, Team Leader, you will report directly to me. Dark Blade, this name is thunderous within the inner circles. Legend has it, it's a team specifically tasked with handling the most challenging, most covert, and highest level missions. Each member is a monster, 1 in 10,000. The position of team leader has been vacant for 3 years. Old Zhong gasped sharply, his eyes wide open. I looked at the transfer order but didn't reach for it immediately. My qualifications. I raised my eyes and looked at the deputy director. Weren't they already revoked? The deputy director's face showed no expression. Headquarters has specially approved their reinstatement, and your top sniper qualification has been upgraded to the highest level. The relevant documents and authorizations will be issued simultaneously after you report for duty. He paused for a moment and added, Crow Feather will also be returned to its rightful owner. Moreover, the team's armory will be fully accessible to you. The terms were so favorable that they were impossible to refuse. Power, status, resources, everything that was once taken away is now returned twofold. I remained silent, my fingers unconsciously tap lightly on the table. The deputy director did not urge me, just watched me quietly. Sunlight slanted in from the high window, dancing on his epaulets in the office. Only old Zhong's heavy breathing could be heard. A long moment passed. I reached out my hand, picked up that transfer order. The paper was light, yet it felt as heavy as 1,000 pounds. A flicker of almost imperceptible relief flashed in the deputy director's eyes. Welcome to Dark Blade, he said in a low voice. I looked at him and slowly spoke. I have one condition. Chapter 33. The deputy director raised an eyebrow slightly. Go on. The candidate for the new captain of the SWAT team. My voice remained calm and steady. I hope to be the one to recommend. Old Zhong quickly covered his mouth to stifle a gasp. Recommending a candidate for captain, this has far exceeded the authority of a team member, even that of a departing one. This is about interfering with personnel appointments within the bureau. The deputy director looked at me deeply, his gaze sharp, as if trying to pierce through my skin to see my true intentions. I did not avoid his gaze. The air seemed to freeze. A few seconds later, the deputy director slowly nodded. All right, who do you want to recommend? I called out a name that left both the deputy director and old Zhong stunned. It wasn't any of the seasoned deputy team leaders, nor was it any of the standout core members of the team, not even a frontline combatant. It was old Zhong from the logistics department. Zhong Weiguo, that good-natured man who had been in the logistics department for over a decade, low-key and unambitious, spending his days either dozing off or reading newspapers. Him, the deputy director, was clearly taken aback, his brow furrowing. Comrade Jiang Xianyu, the position of team leader carries significant responsibility and requires strong professional and managerial skills. I'm afraid, Comrade Zhong Weiguo, professional skills can be cultivated. I interrupted him, my tone leaving no room for doubt. Management ability lies in fairness. My gaze swept across this simple office. A person who has worked in the logistics department for over a decade, maintained clear accounts, never made a mistake, and upheld principles even in the face of unreasonable demands. I believe he is more suited to lead the SWAT team than those who abuse their authority for personal gain and lead the team astray. The deputy director fell silent. He looked at me, a complex light flickering in his eyes as if he was reassessing me. Old Zhong was completely dumbfounded, his mouth agape, looking at me, then at the deputy director, unable to utter a single word. Finally, the deputy director slowly let out a breath. The reasoning is solid, he said gravely. I will bring it up for discussion at the Bureau's party committee meeting. This was almost an implicit approval. I nodded. Thank you. The deputy director gave me a deep look, said nothing more, and turned to leave. It was a long time after he left before old Zhong finally seemed to snap out of it, stammering as he pointed at his own nose. Me, team leader, little Jiang. No, team leader Jiang. You're not joking, are you? How could I possibly be the team leader? I haven't even touched a gun in years. I picked up the rag on the table and began wiping the brand new transfer order, as if it were covered in dust. Uncle Zhong, I said, sometimes those who don't touch guns can see things more clearly. Old Zhong opened his mouth but ultimately said nothing. He just rubbed his hands together in confusion and fear, turning in circles on the spot. I finished wiping the transfer order, carefully folded it, and put it in my pocket. Then, I picked up the chipped teacup. I walked to the water dispenser and filled it with a cup of hot water. The tea leaves slowly unfurl in the cup. A wisp of steam rises, blurring the figures running and leaping on the training ground outside the window, also blurring the past, that period filled with betrayal and humiliation. Chapter 34. Julin's home, the once tidy and bright captain's apartment, was now filled with the sour, stale smell of overnight instant noodles mixed with alcohol. The curtains were tightly drawn, and the room was dimly lit. Empty liquor bottles and torn newspapers littered the floor, the very newspapers that had reported his dismissal and prosecution. Julin, unshaven and hollow-eyed, was slumped on the sofa. In a crumpled robe, his gaze fixed vacantly on the flickering television screen. The screen was broadcasting local news, which happened to be a report on the appointment of Zhong Weiguo as the new captain of the SWAT team. In the footage, old Zhong was dressed in a crisp captain's uniform. Though he appeared somewhat reserved, his eyes conveyed a sense of steadiness and determination. The bureau leader personally awarded him his rank, and thunderous applause erupted from the audience. Julin grabbed an empty wine bottle from beside him and hurled it fiercely at the television. Bang! Crash! The screen exploded into a cloud of black smoke, with fragments scattering everywhere. He was panting heavily, his chest heaving violently. The door lock clicked, and Lin Jingjing walked in carrying a few cheap shopping bags. She had long since lost her designer labels, wearing cheap street market clothes, her face etched with exhaustion and resentment. Seeing the mess on the floor and the shattered television, she screamed, Julin, what madness is this again? This TV was the last thing we could sell for some money. Julin whipped his head around, his bloodshot eyes glaring fiercely at her. Sell for money? If it weren't for you, this jinx, would I have fallen to this state today? If it weren't for your stupidity, not even able to hold a sniper position steady, would I have had to beg that bitch? Lin Jingjing trembled at his roar, then her anger surged. She slammed the shopping bag in her hand onto the ground. Blame me. If it weren't for your uselessness, couldn't even hold on to the captain's position, would I be laughed at by others? If it weren't for your greed, getting me all that messy stuff, would it have been discovered? Julin, you're just a failure. Am I trash? Julin staggered to his feet, pointing at her nose. Who was it that crawled into my bed like a dog back then? Who whispered in my ear every day, urging me to get rid of Jiang Xianyu? You're talking nonsense. Lin Jingjing trembled with rage, rushing forward to claw at Julin. It was you who said Jiang Xianyu was in the way, it was you who promised to give me the best, now that everything's ruined, you blame me." The two instantly grappled with each other, the room filled with curses, cries, and the sound of things shattering. The former affection has vanished without a trace, leaving only the ugliest mutual accusations and resentment. Chapter 35. The days that followed were like a living hell. Zhu Lin, due to the solid evidence, avoided prison but was left with a criminal record, making him unemployable in any organization. He tried working as a security guard and a porter, but his pride and deteriorating state of mind led to him being fired within days each time. He could only survive on his meager savings and the occasional odd jobs Lin Jingjing took on, and his drinking grew increasingly severe. Lin Jingjing's days were not easy either. After being fired, her reputation was ruined, and the friends who used to flatter her now avoided her. She tried to return to her old profession, going to disreputable places, but she was older now and had a criminal record, so she couldn't earn much money. Instead, she was often humiliated. Poverty-stricken couples face sorrow in all things. Money had become the biggest conflict between them. "Where's the money? Where's this month's living expenses?" Lin Jingjing screamed at the drunken Zhu Lin. Zhu Lin slumped on the sofa, his eyes glazed, mumbling, "Gone. Drank it all. Drink, drink, drink. Why don't you just drink yourself to death?" Lin Jingjing lunged forward to snatch the bottle from his hand. "We can barely put food on the table, and you still have money to drink. Get out of my way." Zhu Lin shoved her aside with such force that Lin Jingjing crashed into the coffee table, instantly bruising her forehead. Clutching her head, Lin Jingjing broke down in tears. "I can't live like this anymore. Zhu Lin, I want a divorce." "Divorce?" Zhu Lin sneered drunkenly. "Go ahead, look at yourself now. Who else would want you besides me? Do you still think you're the pampered young lady you used to be?" His venomous words stabbed into Lin Jingjing's heart like knives. She looked at the gaunt, alcohol-reeking man before her, unable to connect him with the once spirited and confident SWAT captain. Despair, like a cold serpent, coiled tightly around her heart. Chapter 36. Arguments and fights had become the norm in this household. Once, after getting drunk, Zhu Lin mentioned Jiang Xianyu again. If only I hadn't been bewitched by her back then. If only I had kept Jiang Xianyu." His eyes were dazed, filled with regret. "I would still be the captain now, basking in glory." This statement completely ignited the jealousy and resentment that Lin Jingjing had long suppressed. Jiang Xianyu, you're still thinking about that bitch even now." She went mad, grabbing a fruit knife from the table and lunging at Zhu Lin. "I'll make you think, I'll kill you." Although Zhu Lin was drunk, his instincts were still intact, and he instinctively raised his hand to block. Phut! The fruit knife sliced through his arm, and blood instantly gushed out. The pain jolted Zhu Lin awake a bit. He looked at the gruesome wound on his arm, then at Lin Jingjing, who seemed to have gone mad. A surge of violent rage shot straight to the top of his head. "You dare use a knife?" he roared, snatching the fruit knife from her and, in one swift motion, slamming Lin Jingjing hard to the ground. "Ah!" Lin Jingjing let out a sharp cry as her head hit the corner of the table, and everything went dark before her eyes. Still not satisfied, Zhu Lin straddled her, using his uninjured hand to choke her neck fiercely, his face twisted with rage. "You bitch! You want me dead? I'll kill you first." Lin Jingjing struggled desperately, her feet kicking wildly, her face turning blue and purple from lack of oxygen. Just as her consciousness was about to fade, Zhu Lin seemed to finally regain a shred of reason. Looking down at her twisted face beneath him, he suddenly released his grip. Lin Jingjing coughed violently, gasping for air, her eyes filled with deep-seated fear and hatred as she stared at Zhu Lin. From that day on, the home completely turned into a battlefield. Both of them were like startled birds, wary of each other, and even the smallest matter could trigger a fierce fight. Everything that could be smashed in the house had been smashed, leaving only a mess and a lingering sense of despair. Chapter 37. On a night of pouring rain, the continuous unemployment, poverty, and mutual torment finally broke Zhu Lin's last nerve. He drank the last bottle of cheap liquor in the house, his eyes bloodshot as he stared at Lin Jingjing, who was huddled in the corner, looking equally haggard. "It's all you. It's all because of you, you jinx," he muttered to himself, staggering to his feet and heading toward the kitchen. Lin Jingjing watched him warily. What are you trying to do?" Julin didn't answer, pulling out a rusty cleaver from the kitchen that was what they used to chop pork ribs with before, and it hadn't been used for a long time. The blade was covered in dark red rust. Seeing the knife, Lin Jingjing's pupils suddenly contracted, and she screamed, trying to run out the door. Trying to run, Julin sneered, grabbing her hair and dragging her back forcefully. You ruined me, you think you can run? Let's go to hell together. He raised the cleaver and swung it down hard at Lin Jingjing. Lin Jingjing erupted with the instinct to survive, struggling and twisting desperately. Crunch! The blade fell, missing any vital spots but landing squarely on Lin Jingjing's left leg. The sound of bone shattering was clearly audible amidst the rain. Ah! Lin Jingjing let out a piercing, agonizing scream as blood instantly stained her pant leg in the ground. The excruciating pain and blood loss nearly caused her to faint. Juling stared at the gushing blood, seemingly stunned for a moment, before bursting into maniacal laughter. At that moment, the neighbors, alarmed by the screams, finally called the police. The sound of sirens grew closer and closer. Julin, hearing the sirens, was like a startled beast. He dropped the cleaver, staggered toward the door, and tried to flee. However, he was too drunk, slipped, and tumbled straight down the stairs. The head slammed heavily against the concrete edge of the corner. A dull thud sounded. Chapter 38. Hospital. The smell of disinfectant was pungent. Lin Jingjing lay on the hospital bed, her left leg encased in a thick cast and suspended high in the air. The doctor told her that with a comminuted fracture of the leg bone and severe damage to blood vessels and nerves, even after healing, she would be left with a severe disability and would limp for life. She stared blankly at the ceiling, her face devoid of any expression. In the next room, Julin had suffered a severe head injury. Although timely emergency treatment saved his life, the brain damage resulted in permanent intellectual decline, leaving him unable to care for himself and requiring lifelong care. He would sometimes giggle foolishly, other times scream in terror. Completely lost in his own world. After investigation, the police determined that this was a severe injury incident triggered by family conflicts. Julin committed the assault with a knife, causing serious injuries, but due to his own severe injuries and concerning mental state, he could not be held criminally responsible. Lin Jingjing also engaged in aggressive behavior. The once illustrious SWAT team captain and his white moonlight had become, one a disabled and mentally impaired person requiring lifelong care, the other a permanently crippled individual with a lifelong limp. They have nothing, no career, no family, no future. All that remains are their broken bodies and the unbearable memory of tearing each other apart, ultimately leading to mutual destruction. And the cause of all this was perhaps already sealed the moment Julin tore up that sniper certificate for his own selfish desires, with Lin Jingjing covering her mouth and chuckling beside him.